Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Everyone groovy? I'd like to start with a song from the Povo Arara, the Arara people in the Amazon. This isn't a Daime song, but can we run that song, please? This is a song that's played when people gather together for a party. So let's gather our minds. I recorded that song in Fortaleza, which is a Daime community on the border of Bolivia and Brazil. It's from the Povo Arara. And it was a festival, it was a 10-day festival about 10 years ago. And there was a big contingent of indigenous people there. And the point I want to make is here that the Brazilian ayahuasca traditions, particularly Daime, have a long and continuing relationship with the indigenous traditions. Daime grew out of confluence of folk Catholicism and indigenous culture, indigenous animism. There was a question asked at the ayahuasca conference in Ibiza a number of years ago. One of the indigenous leaders was asked, do you think of Santo Daime as a Christian colonization of your culture? And he said, no, it's the other way around, we colonized them. Indigenous traditions, when I say, or local folk Catholic traditions have arisen in all kinds of different places all over South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and they arise out of the place from the various things at the fingertips of the people there. So I'd like us to bear that in mind as we're talking about this today. Right, Brazilian ayahuasca religions. My first introduction to Daime was, I knew nothing about Daime. I was living in Japan, and my ex-wife said to me, would you like to come to a crazy drugs party? And I went, yeah, of course. She didn't speak much English at the time, I didn't speak much Japanese at the time, and I didn't need much persuading. So I went along, and I was very surprised to see something like this. Gentlemen on one side, women on the other, uniforms, crosses, Virgin Mary, incense, the whole shebang. And I looked around for there was only one other foreigner in the room, and I made a beeline for him, and I said, is this some kind of a church? He was tuning his guitar at the time, and wearing a Star of David on his chest. And he said, yeah, it's a funky church. That was Adrian Friedman. I don't know if you know him, the first man I drunk Daime with. So I kind of stood contemptuously through the opening prayers and then drank a dose and spent most of the session on the floor rolling around, traveling between edges of the universe, crawling to the bucket. You'll be familiar with the experience. And we got to the end, and I lay in a heap for a little while longer, an hour actually, in retrospect. And then someone came and asked me to stand up to drink some more Daime, and I genuinely thought he was joking. And then we started again, and we did a whole other half of the session. But over the years, I've come to rather like it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it looks like, a little bit about the music, it's a musical tradition, and also a little bit about the history of Daime, and I'll talk briefly about Barquinha and also the UDV. So it looks like this. We arrange ourselves into lines, men on one side, women on the other, and also at the edge of a kind of table, so like this. And there's this is a bailado. It involves a dance. I'll show you what the dance looks like. It goes like this. I don't normally do it on my own. I normally do it in a room full of people, but it goes like this. And right, and left, and right, and left. And we do that all day, hours and hours and hours, whilst drinking and singing. There's not much more to it than a prayer at the beginning. drinking and doing this dance side to side. And the women go one way and the men go the other, and the men go the other way, like this. So it's a kind of a moving geometry in the session, a bit like a kind of moving mandala around the central table. And into that moving mandala, you've also got the percussion instrument, the maraca, and you've also got the songs, and you've also got the teachings, and you've also got the rhyme and the meter, and it all brings it into a very interesting, moving in many ways experience. And we do Daime on our feet. We drink ayahuasca on our feet. We don't lie down in hammocks and that kind of thing. The idea here is that we are learning something that we can then go and take out into the world on our feet and engage with the world in such a way. So that's one of our sessions, the bailado. This is the concentração. Bailado means dance, concentração means concentration. This is a shorter session. This happens on the 15th and 30th of every month. It involves sitting down, drinking a dose, staying quiet for an hour and a half, then standing up and singing 17 songs. And that's it. That's in my lineage. There's a couple of different lineages. I'm going to be talking about Alto Santo lineage, which is the original lineage of Daime. This formation you can see here, it's not a square, it's a hexagon, which is of a different lineage. That's the Mapia lineage. They do concentrations a little bit differently. They break it up with songs. So what else do we have? We have Daime, obviously, you know what that is. It's ayahuasca produced in a certain context, in a certain ritual. And this is what it looks like when we make it. This is the ayahuasca, obviously. This is how we do it. So what we do is we get 12 men around stumps, and they beat the vine over and over again, and they beat it in silence or singing songs. So there's no chatting going on while we're doing this. This requires a dieta. So in Daime we have a dieta, which is 3 days before and 3 days after the session, we don't have sex. So for feitio, we also do this. When you're making, feitio is the making of the Daime. 3 days before, 3 days afterwards, no sex. Also highly advised, no alcohol, no heroin, other things like that. When I'm doing a session, I don't watch zombie films for a couple of days beforehand to keep my head nice and clear for the session. So this is how this part of the ritual is done. The fire is lit right at the beginning, even though we're not actually cooking anything yet, because Daime requires fire, water, leaf, and vine. These are the 4 ingredients. That's how we cook it. Cooked according to a specific recipe. There's lots of ways of making ayahuasca, including with different DMT sources. Keep on hearing these things about monoamine oxidase inhibitors and all this kind of stuff. Actually, what Daime is a king and a queen. A king and a queen. And the ayahuasca, we call it a king. If you drink jagubi on its own, drink jagubi tea on its own, it'll make you feel big and strong. It won't do a whole lot, but it will do something. This is why obviously I'm being flippant about the MAOIs. They do something, but they do something on their own. It makes you feel big and strong. If you drink the leaf on its own, it won't do much. But if you put them together, we say the king wakes up the queen, and the queen gives her light. This is how we serve Daime. That's Saturnino. And music. So music is very central to our tradition, and has been right from the beginning. And notice that this chair here that you can see is an empty chair, although it's not empty. This has the disincarnate spirit of Mestre Ireneo. Mestre Ireneo is the founder of my lineage, our lineage. Daime, he was a 2-meter tall black man from slave descent, born in Maranhão, over there. This is actually closer geographically to Africa than it is to the Amazon. So he made a very long journey across Brazil in the rubber boom of the 1910s, when Europeans were busy fighting wars and they needed rubber. So there was a rubber boom in this kind of no man's land of the Amazon at the time. So along he went. He was very tall. People there are very short, as you can see. It's quite a traditional, quite conservative place, still is, in some ways quite a racist place, as in a lot of places in Brazil are. But this guy developed a great deal of fame in his time, so I want to tell you a little bit about him. He was known for never having been seen getting angry. So he was working with the Border Commission, and he encountered some indigenous group, probably the Hunikuin, but we're not entirely sure which indigenous people he initially drunk with. And their tradition involves Ikaros. I'm assuming you all know what an Ikaro is. I'll just say what it is anyway. It's a rhythmical series of syllables, notes, which, let's say, contains or passes the essence or the power of a plant. It's a way that a shaman will make an alliance with a plant and then use that plant to cure not just plants as well. They could be spirits, spirit animals, or they don't call them spirits, of course, forces of nature, etc., etc., etc. So Mestre Ioneo was, he learned how to use ayahuasca, and in 1916, so he was working as a traditional healer. Humming, singing, treating people, including some of his political enemies. There were people who were out to shut down the Daime. One Lieutenant Aldernes, I think his name was, who was after Daime the whole time because Mestre was born 2 years after slavery was abolished in Brazil, so born in quite a racist time, and he was involved in a tradition which has been oppressed since first contact with Europeans. So a lot of people were out to get him. And one of them was this guy, Aldernes, who got so ill that someone said, look, you've got to go and see the big black guy. You're going to be in trouble if you don't. And off he went, and he was cured and became one of his followers. You see this quite a lot in the stories of Mestre, making enemies into friends. So one day he drunk some Daime, some ayahuasca. It wasn't Daime at that time. And the moon, he's looking at the moon, and the moon came down to him in the form of a woman and said this to him. I'll just translate it for you. Look, I'm going to give you some hymns. You're going to leave behind this business of whistling and humming to learn how to sing. And he said, don't do this, my lady. I don't know how to sing. And she said, but I will teach you. On another day, he was looking at the moon again, and she said to him, now you're going to sing. And he said, but how can I sing? It's very difficult. You're going to learn, I'm going to teach you, open your mouth. But how? Open your mouth. Am I not ordering you? So he opened his mouth, and this is a song that came out. I'm just going to sing the first couple of verses from it. The songs, I'm going to sing a few songs today, not normally sung out of ceremony, particularly this one. So I just want to ask you respectfully to listen very carefully when I'm singing. Deus te salve, ó lua branca, da luz tão prateada. Tu sois minha protetora, de Deus tu sois estimada. Tu sois minha protetora, de Deus tu sois estimada. Oh, Mãe divina do coração, lá nas altos onde estás, minha mãe, lá no céu, dai-me o perdão. Which means God salutes you, white moon. You give silvery light. You are my protector, esteemed of days of God. Respected of God, divine mother of my heart, there in the heights where you are, my mother there in heaven, forgive me. So this is quite a long song, fairly long song, and all our songs are received. We call it received, not constructed. They tend to come. I've done another talk, Breaking Convention, some years ago, about what happens with the songs. I'll talk about that in a sec. Notice Daime or perdão, Daime. Daime means give me, and what we drink is Santo Daime, or holy give me. In Daime, we are expected to ask for what we want. We're expected to raise ourselves up to encounter what there is there, rather than lying down and waiting for stuff to happen to us. So, for example, the prayer at the beginning of Daime is traditional Catholic prayer, Pai Nosso, which is Our Father. In English, Our Father has a line that goes, Thy kingdom come, Thy kingdom come. which is venha nós ao vosso reino in Portuguese. So Mestre Ireneo in his wisdom changed this line to be vamos nós ao vosso reino, which means let's go to your kingdom. So not thy kingdom come, but let's go to your kingdom. So the onus is on us to take ourselves up into the right place, to learn things, to make efforts. And you see this in various different parts of the ritual. For example, the Daime doesn't come to you. You go and approach the Daime when you want it. Also, in terms of obligations, when you get initiated into this lineage, my lineage, you're expected to go and do all the sessions. If you don't go and do the session, no one's going to call you up and say, hey, where were you? In fact, it's forbidden to ask people, where were you? That's one of the things we can't do. Also, we're not allowed to invite people because it's got to be the volition of them coming to the session. So it's forbidden to invite people. It's forbidden to do proselytizing. It's forbidden to do propaganda. You can't come out of a session and say, hey, you've got to drink Daime. It's amazing. It's going to change your life. You can't do that. It's illegal. Which shows a lot of wisdom. A lot of people that go to the jungle for a little while, drink for a few months, and they're a shaman, and they're coming back, and the sun shines out of their arses. You know the kind of person I'm talking about. So we're very careful. Psychedelics generally, we talk about ego dissolution. My experience is they tend to dissolve your ego and then it expands into whatever container you happen to have. So we've got some certain rules in Daime to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay. So I just want to come back to this story. Bring out a few points from it. So this is what he says to her. Don't do this, my lady. So this song was given against Mestre Ireneo's will. It came from a higher power. It came with a vision and voice at the same time. It had complete rhyme and rhythm and also meaning in it. And it arrived complete. Okay. I just want to draw a comparison with another famous gentleman from a similar era. This is Nietzsche. I chose Nietzsche because no one can doubt the effect that this man had on 20th century philosophy. But there's lots of examples I could have drawn. Nietzsche said, "One is the mere incarnation, mouthpiece, or medium of an almighty power. I have never had any choice in the matter." This is the guy who said God is dead. Talking about an almighty power here. So we can see similar things here, against his will and also from a higher power. Revelation in the sense that something becomes suddenly visible and audible with indescribable certainty and accuracy. So we're seeing a vision at the same time as a voice. There's an instinct for rhythmic relations. Everything seems to present itself as the readiest, the correctest, and the simplest means of expression. So this kind of direct transmission of teachings and rhythm and rhyme, all this kind of thing. You see it in various different traditions. So you see it with Mozart as well. Mozart talks about hearing all the parts all at the same time. This is William Blake talking about writing from immediate dictation, 12 or sometimes 20 or 30 lines at a time without premeditation, even against my will. That's what he said about the writing of Jerusalem. William Blake was a painter as well, or an artist anyway. This is one of his images. This is one of Pablo Amaringo's images. I find the connections between these two pieces of art quite fascinating. All right, back to Daime. And the songs come in visions, they can come in fevers, they can come in dreams, they can come spontaneously when you're doing the washing up. They can come in hypnagogia, in the space between sleep and awake. And often they'll come when you've got a problem, you've got something to think about and you want a solution, and the solution will come as a song which answers the problem. What are the songs for? So the songs are, in some of the songs are to call spirits in the same way that Icaros are to call spirits. So I'm not going to call any spirits here. Actually, I am. There's one song where I can't say most, I can't call most of the spirits here because it's inappropriate, because we don't do that outside a session. But there's one song that I am going to sing here, which is called Cacheado. I'm going to tell you a story about cacheado. Cacheado means curly in Portuguese. If you Google cacheado, you will see hundreds of images of Brazilian women with curly hair. So this is a song to call the let's say the spirit of the spiral, or the shape of the spiral. This is Dona Pacilia, who is one of the earliest followers of Mestre, talking about how this song came to be. Mestre was working inside the Miração. He was basically drinking Daime when there appeared to him two entities. One talking to the other. And one of them said to the other one, Cashiado, vem acá. Curly, come here. And the other one responded, laughing, Caha, ca, caha, ca, ca, which is how you laugh in Portuguese. I.e., so when the first one wanted to call again, the second one responded laughing again, Caha, ca, caha, ca, ca. And he doubled the laugh, which is exactly what Caha, ca, caha, ca, ca is. It's a doubled laugh. And when Mestre saw this, the music came at the same time. It goes like this. Cashiado venha cá, caha, ca, caha, ca, ca. Cashiado venha cá, caha, ca, caha, ca, ca. Caha, ca, caha, ca, ca, caha, ca, caha, ca, ca. Caha, ca, caha, ca, ca, caha, ca, caha, ca, ca. That's the one we do in the break of a session, in the diversões. Diversões means fun in Portuguese. So we stop the session and have some fun in the middle. So some of them to do that. Some of them are to manifest the forces of nature. Chué, chué, chué is the noise of the rain in Portuguese. And a friend of mine and a daimista by the name of Edson Alexandre, he was having dinner with Saturnino, who you saw in that earlier photo, and the rain started to drop on the roof of the house where he was having dinner, and a song started coming to him. And he asked for a pen and paper, and this is what he recorded. It's quite a long song, again. We're going to sing this one. After this, at the end, me and Gilles, who's kind of in and out the door there, are going to perform some Daime songs, about 8 or 10 of them. So I'm just going to sing the first bit. So, chué, 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 chua, chua, chua is the sound of the rain. This first verse says, rain noise, rain noise, rain noise, rain noise, rain noise, rain noise, thunder and lightning, and the water came down to clean. Rain noise, it's the divine pardon that our Father sends from the astral plane. Let's pay attention and let's get happy. It estremece a terra. It shakes the ground that our Father sends. Let's all clean ourselves and so we can return to our Father. I ask permission to enter the profundities of the sea. As profound as I go, I appeal for pardon. Rain, 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 rain. Thunder and lightning, and the rain went, rain, rain. Chué, 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 chua, chua, chua. Chué, 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 chua, chua, chua. Relampejou e trovejou, e desce água para limpar. Relampejou e trovejou, e desce água para limpar. Chué, 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 etc. Goes on and on. Right, so you notice how we repeat the songs. This comes from a tradition where people couldn't read, so they were done with call and response. Some of the songs are to praise the spirits, to praise the various, the kind of Holy Family, that's Mary, Jesus Cristo, and Saint Joseph, and these kind of cats, the three kings. Some of them are for to cure diseases, right? I dine out on this story a lot, but I got ill. I got this, leishmaniasis. I'm not going to talk about it now very much. I'm just going to show you a nasty picture. It's a parasite, and I treated it when I was in the Amazon with Daime, drinking Daime every day for about 4 or 5 months. And it went away. So this is one of the songs which gave me a lot of strength during this experience. This is one, I cure everything, I expel everything with the power of the Eternal Father. Quite interesting what the gentleman before me spoke about people overestimating what ayahuasca does. In my tradition anyway, when Mestre first encountered the Queen of the Forest, he asked her something. Well, she said, I'll give you a present. She said, what do you want? He said, I want to be a great healer. She said, it's done. Where I'm taking all of the powers of the medicinal plants of the forest and putting them into Daime. And he said, great. And she said, but you're not allowed to make any money out of it. And so until today, Daimistas are not allowed to make money out of their sessions. If you go along to a Daime session, they're charging you 100 quid, 150 quid. Meh. Yeah, we don't do that in traditional fashion. when I treated leishmaniasis, which is quite a nasty disease, the next stage can dissolve the cartilage in your nose and ears, people thought I was crazy because they've lost touch with how powerful their medicine is. This one says, I won't sing actually, curo tudo, expulso tudo com poder do Pai Eterno. It means I cure everything, I expel everything with the power of the Eternal Father. This is from Vera Frois. Não tem medo de morrer, se sair correndo é pior para você. Which means, don't be afraid of dying. If you run away, it's going to get worse for you. Some of the Daime songs tell stories. And some of them, just checking on my time here, I've got loads of time. Some of them tell us about our theology, right? One of Mestri's followers was ill, very ill, worried about dying, and he asked Mestri about this. Mestri said, I'm going to go and drink some Daime and get back to you. And he did, and this was a song that he produced. I'm just going to translate it for you. Well, actually, this is the third verse, which I can translate here. After you disincarnate, after you die, have strength in the heart. If God gives you permission, you come back for another incarnation. So Daimistas are into reincarnation. That's what we're into. I kind of want to make something quite clear here. You're not instructed to believe anything in Daime. Nothing at all, right? The instructions that we have are around ritual, how you do the ritual. There's certain like instructions. Yeah, coming on to instructions here. I'll give you an example of them. So Mestri was one time, he was asked, listen, why don't you get the Bible out and start preaching the Bible at the end of the session like the other preachers? And he said, well, we don't do that here. We don't use the Bible here. The songs are our Bible and the Daime is our teacher. So in many ways, it looks very, very Catholic what we do, and in many ways it is, but in many ways it's actually not. As I said, Mestri was born in quite a racist time when the power of the Catholic Church was very strong. Mestri made a point of not going into direct combat with the Catholic Church. This comes out of the black experience in Brazil. You have these communities called quilombos, which were escaped slave communities, which tried to keep their whereabouts unknown. And there's certain ways of dealing with state power. And Mestri was very clever about this. We still have problems with the state in Brazil, and finding ways to deal with it. So he said, no, the Bible is banned in this session. Although he was a student of the Bible, he did esoteric study of the Bible. The kind of instructions in the Daime are not, thou shalt not do this, that, and another. I'll give you some examples of what we do say. Presta atenção. That is the most common thing you see in the Daime, right? That means pay attention. Pay attention, right? That being the secret to life, I think. We need to stop the bad news post office. Don't gossip. Don't fight with your brother or sister. This is an interesting one. Não tem convite, não se pode convidar. Se convidar é fraternal. Com a divindade não se pode brincar. Which means there aren't any invites. You can't invite people. If you invite people, it's a fraternal error. With divinity, you don't mess around, right? So this is another thing. We don't do that. We don't invite people. I mentioned it before. But it's really, really important. If you get invited to a Daime session, it's not a Daime session. It's someone pretending that it's a Daime session. What you can do is you can tell people about it. We do tell people about it. But you need to be quite careful in your wording because the volition needs to come from that person. A little bit of history here. So Mestri arrives in 1914 at the frontier, very quickly befriended some indigenous people. He received that first song, Lua Branca, in 1916. First Daime session was over 15 years later. Right, so there was a long period of incubation. Some more songs were received, not actually that many at this time. This took place in Villa Ivoneci, which was basically Mestri's camp with some of his followers around him, mostly black people from the other side of Brazil who'd arrived with the rubber tappers. We'll come back to Villa Ivoneci in a minute. 1936, the uniform was introduced, as was the dance that I showed you before, as was the maracá. In traditional shamanism, the shaman plays maracá. We are a non-shamanic lineage, right? You won't find anyone in Daime, hopefully, calling themselves a shaman, including the guy who's running it, or the woman who's running it. We in traditional shamanism, the shaman will go off on his own or on her own on their journey and come back with some kind of a cure for you, some kind of a plant or dietary recommendation, or go and hang the guy who put this curse on you, or whatever it might be. I was joking, but it's true. So Mestre said one day, we're all going to play maraca now. So we all play maraca and we all go together and we all come back together, which is one of the beautiful things about Daime. The kind of shamanism that survived the invasions of the Spanish and Portuguese is the one you'll be familiar with, going off into the jungle for 6 months or a year, long periods of sexual abstinence, dietas, austerities, etc., etc., etc. We don't know what was around before the Spanish arrived. And there's a good argument to be made, and Gail Hypine makes it, that before the Spanish invasions, there was a kind of collective ritual involving ayahuasca. As there are in North America, you still get these kind of circle dances and that kind of thing with the indigenous people there. So it may not be that Daime is a completely new thing. The idea of everyone getting together, drinking together, doing collective ritual may be a kind of re-establishing of something which used to exist in some form before those invasions. I guess another thing is this, maybe, I don't know about obsession, but the fact that shamanism is so closely connected to cure may have something to do with the fact that the Spanish and Portuguese brought loads of diseases and loads of trauma into the place as well. So who knows what Daime ayahuasca used to be used for. This is Daniel Pereira de Matos. So he was a friend and follower of Mestre Ireneo, known for his bohemian lifestyle. One of the first musicians in the Daime. And so he worked for some years in Villa Ivaneci, and one day he was drinking Daime and he had a vision. And Mestre said, "What do you see?" And he says, "I don't want to tell you." And he goes, come on, my son, tell me what it is. Help. I don't really like this look. Okay, well, anyway. Apologies. So he, where was I? So he had a vision. He said, what was the vision? The vision was I was given a blue book, and the book had different songs on it and a different type of ritual. And Mestre said, oh, that's very interesting. What was it like? It was a mixture of what we're doing and Umbanda, which is the Afro-Brazilian tradition where they incorporate elements of the Orishas, which is the Yoruba tradition from what's now Nigeria. So he started off his own lineage. It's called Barquinha, and it is eye-wateringly beautiful. This is what it looks like. It looks quite strange, I will admit. A Barquinha means little boat. The people dress up like sailors, whereas in Daime we dress up like soldiers. And there's all kind of boat icons and anchors around the place. This is about as far you can get from the sea anywhere on the land of the planet. Right? Probably none of these people have ever seen the sea. Certainly when this thing arose, they'd never seen the sea. But yeah, so the ritual, the music is slightly different, a little bit slower, and so they'll do the psalms, during which people will incorporate spirits. So in Daime, traditional Daime, we don't incorporate spirits. We don't let the spirits take over our bodies and do what they do in Umbanda. In Barquinha, you see all that kind of thing. So you'll see people incorporating the spirits of the caboclos, who are Amazonian warriors. So you'll see people doing like this. Firing darts at invisible monkeys. You will see people. First time I went, actually, it was not actually Barquinha, it was Baixinha, which is a similar lineage, Umbandaime, and I was completely weirded out. Absolutely. I mean, we arrived, drunk and dose of Daime, and about 2 minutes in, people were, you had cowboys, they have vaqueros, which is one of the types of spirits which they incorporate, and they'll be like charging around the salon, like, with imaginary horses, not imaginary horses, spirit horses. So you have the cowboys, you have the Indians, you have the preto velhos, the old slaves, who will, these are the spirits of slaves reincorporated into the bodies of mediums. I had an experience with one of these. When I was ill, I was told about a particular preta velha, a female entity, who was very good at treating this disease, Feri da Brava, that I had. So I went to go and do a consultation with this woman. I didn't speak very much Portuguese at the time. So the preto velhos, they'll walk around like this. Well, they'll be normal people, and then they'll incorporate, and then they'll start walking around like this. And they sit down on like wooden stumps, smoking a pipe, because the slave times, according to this tradition, the slaves used to smoke a pipe a lot, and they will give you advice on whatever problem that you bring to them. So this woman, said I had this disease, and she said, okay, well, what she do? She gave me a massage on the arm, and she swished around my back with a scarf. And she said some prayers. She said I had to make an offering of white roses and some other things. She said I needed to take certain leaves and do things, a sign of the cross over it, certain dietary advice, all this kind of stuff. All this was being translated for me. At the end of this, I said to her, I have one question. My question was, I didn't voice it, my question was, what's your name? But I didn't voice it. I said, I have one question. She said to me, my name is Maria da Mata. I thought that was pretty cool. So you've got the Preto Velhos, you've got also the Crianças. So those 5 sets of spirits: cowboys, Indians, Preto Velhos, Crianças, and what's the other one? Orixás as well. So in the second, the first part of the ceremony happens like this. The second part of the ceremony, they will go out into the terreiro, like a kind of, it's not a church thing, it's like a kind of dance floor, I think is probably the best word of it. The men will make a circle, walk in a circle, the women will walk in a circle inside, and they're walking as if they're on boats. So the music is going on, it's influenced by Umbanda music, it's incredible music, like pounding drums and fantastic musicians. Walking like this, as if you're on a boat, like going from side to side around the thing. And then people will be breaking off from this and incorporating spirits and kind of whirling around in the middle, all those kind of things. Incredibly beautiful. That's Barquinha. Daniel, Frei Daniel, he's called respectfully, Brother Daniel. Mestre and him remained friends. Mestre used to go and visit his center. Until today, there are still groups of certain times of the year when Daimistas will go and visit this center. So they remain very close. He became ill, and Mestre got wind that he was ill, and he received this song. Goes like this. Chamei lá nas alturas para o divino me ouvir. A minha mãe me respondeu, o filho meu, estou aqui. He said, we've got to go and see Daniel, he's going to die. And he went over to Frei Daniel, presented this song to him. Daniel died a few days afterwards. At that time, you see, because Daniel was a fantastic musician, the other musicians in the Daime were kind of struggling with the guitar. And Mestre said, now that Daniel is disincorporated, is disincarnate, he can come back and show you where to put your finger on the guitars. And there's stories of seeing dots. Of Mestre's wife, for example, used to play guitar, seeing dots where she had to put her fingers. So I kind of bring this in just to show you how, I guess we get the idea that when religions break off for each other, they start to argue, and that is the case in Daime as well. I mean, I won't lie to you, there's quite a lot of tension sometimes between the lineages on various different things, but it's not always like that. The guitar. In 1945, Villa Ivoneci, the police rocked up with instructions to close it down for devil worship. Famously brutal commander called Commander Costa. So they circled, this is at night, they woke up Mestre, circled his house, and they woke him up and they put a gun to his head and said, "You're going to stop this nonsense?" He said, "No, I'm not." So they arrested him, took him back to the police station, and where he was interviewed. By the end of the interview, he'd not only convinced them that he wasn't worshipping the devil, he convinced them that he was doing good work, and they gave him land in Rio Branco to set up his first center. We don't call them churches. Mestre didn't like them being called churches because I said he didn't want to come into conflict with the church, the Catholic Church. So Mestre started doing his sessions there. When he arrived, he realized very quickly we need to plant food. So he put his followers to planting food on a massive scale. Shortly after that, an English guy went to the Amazon, stole some rubber seeds, took them back to Chelsea Physic Garden and propagated rubber. And then basically the arse fell out of the rubber boom. There was a famine in the region. There was no money, and all these people came streaming into the city to try and find food. Mestre Ioneo and his followers were producing 40% of the food at this particular point in history. So Mestre became a local hero. The district is named in his honor. You can get a bus to Ireneo Serra, and I've taken that bus. I like that bus. The other religion I want to bring up briefly is the UDV, the União de Vegetal. This is Mestre Gabriel, who encountered ayahuasca in the 50s. They do things slightly differently. They sit down in nice, very comfy chairs. They all get their doses and they all drink together. They do a kind of cheers. They have slightly different names. They call the vine Mariri, for example. We call it Jagubi. But their session entirely involves sitting down, listening to chamados, and also they talk about things and they tell a cycle of stories inside their tradition. Now, their stories are not for public consumption. Sorry, I was actually on the phone to a guy from the UDV, and I asked him what I could tell you. He said, "Well, you can tell him it's called Mariri." Okay, I can tell him that. I guess what I really want to tell you is this thing about the meeting between Daime and UDV, which happened in about 1960, I think it was. One of the followers of Mestre went to a UDV session in Rio Branco and gave them a bottle of Daime, and they drank it. And this was the chamado, this was the calling song, which was produced out of that. It's called Corre para onde tem sombra, run to where there is shade. Run to where there is shade, ask to whom has to give. Do not ask to whom never had. Even if he had, he would not give. It's the superior force to whom we should ask. Dai-me força, dai-me luz, dai-me o divino amor. Dai-me paciência, dai-me obediência, dai-me a saúde perfeita. This song is still sung in the UDV, and it comes from this early encounter between these two lineages. One of the things that's quite interesting about the União de Vegetal is that they have this idea of ciencia, which we don't have so much in the other lineages. So ciencia means sciences, and like, for example, it was the UDV who were first studied. They did a kind of a study of ayahuasca drinkers from the UDV, comparing them to people who were of similar class and so on and so forth. Basically, actually, they're brothers and sisters, literal brothers and sisters who didn't drink, and found that basically the people who drank Daime or drank ayahuasca were better off. They were just cooler. Less likely to be addicted was one of the things. What were they? More calm. If I remember correctly, it was they respond to novelties better. But a few things were just better. So so ciencia, they talk about the material sciences and the spiritual sciences. The spiritual sciences are how to deal with the spirits. And they trace this back to Hey Salomon, King Solomon, who's very important in their tradition. And up until today, they've been at the forefront of scientific experiments into ayahuasca. Also, something very close to my heart, which is agroforestry. They're really big into recreating agroforestry systems. They've got 18 agroforestry demonstration systems in Brazil. I'm actually going to plug something here, which is a charity which basically I've recently set up, doing reforestation in Brazil. We just this has got nothing to do with the thing I'm meant to be talking about, but we just financed the building of a sapling nursery in combination with a school in a very dry part of Brazil that's going to be producing 1,500 trees, which are going into riverbank restoration and spring restoration. So just note the name Rain Umbrella. Rain Umbrella. Rain is Regenerative Agroforestry Impact Network. So rainumbrella.org. You're going to be hearing a lot more of us. So these are our three religions that I wanted to talk about today. Finally, what I want to say, just before I plug something else actually, you can't invite people. Now I know that we come from various different traditions, we do things in different ways, but I would like us just to perhaps think about this particular gem of wisdom from the Daime. If you want people to drink ayahuasca because you think it will help them, there are certain ways to do that, and there are certain ways not to do that, I would say. And I'd say the way to do that is to act in a moral, loving, optimistic and happy way. And when people notice, gosh, you're quite interesting, aren't you? What is it you do that I don't do? Well, you might say, well, I drink ayahuasca, actually. But if you say to someone, go on, get some ayahuasca into you, not cool look. All right, this is the final plug. I have a book over there. It's called Neuroapocalypse. I would very much like it if you looked at it. Don't buy it, but come and look at it. Roz, who is over there, show us your hand. She's going to be selling books over there. There's some paintings over there that you can look at as well. They are with Psychedelic, and there's Psychedelic Press Journal over there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was quite fascinating to hear about these different traditions and different ways of using ayahuasca, and especially about merging it together with Christianity. Being so involved, I just wanted to ask you, is there a specific journey, a specific vision, a specific moment that changed your life? And did it have any symbolic, any visual connotation to it, or was it more emotional?
Yeah, I've had that. Thank you for the question. Lots and lots of magic all the way through. I guess the biggest thing that happened to me involving Daime was when I got sick, and I'd gone to Brazil with a very specific 2 missions. One was to finish my book, which was about medicine and the history of medicine and autonomy and magic and all the good things. And the second thing was to learn about the tradition of Daime, how powerful it could be. And so I got sick. I got very, very sick. And people around me said, that's really serious. You need to go and take injections of antimonium tartrate, which is a heavy metal. 150 injections or 180 injections into your veins. If you don't do that, you're going to lose the nose, the cartilage in your nose and ears and stomach. So I got kind of freaked out, really, but my academic background is a history of medicine, and I've seen this kind of thing happen all over the world. Particularly I studied Ayurveda in India and how it had been kind of, how it was battling with interventionist pharmacological medicine. So I drank a dose. I want to make it quite clear that I'd already been involved in Daime for 6 years now. I don't recommend that when you first drink a dose and you get a crazy idea that you necessarily follow it up. Right, ayahuasca involves a whole lot of self-study to be able to distinguish what is you, what is your projection, and what is perhaps, let's say, information from another particular zone. All right, and also in Daime, we don't just drink once or 3 times and then go back to our lives. We drink and we drink and we drink. Traditionally, drink every 2 weeks. All right, so we're continually going back and reassessing what we've seen and in session. Anyway, so I drank a dose, and what I saw all the people who'd come up to me and said, "You've got this really serious disease. You've got to have injections. Here's mine. Look, here's my scar, or here's my scar," showing me their scars. And I also saw that these people also had some other disease, some other problem. One of them had bumps on his legs, and one of them had joint pain all the time because antimonium attacks your joints. One of them was just an idiot who hadn't learnt his lesson. And also during the session, I kind of ran through the various spiritual traditions. I was looking at the guys, what type of seeker, what kind of ayahuasquero are you? I'd be of the seeker category, I think. So running through all these different traditions that I was interested in, one of which was Christianity, obviously. Suffering leads to rebirth in the Christian tradition. In the shamanic tradition, the vision of dismembering, being chopped up and then put back together is a very common shamanic vision. And in Buddhism, you have this idea of dukkha, the first noble truth being suffering, and the result of that is, or the way out of it, let's say, is to concentrate on the paths, right, the paths of how things happen. Another one was, in Daime, obviously, we have purge. We purge, we get rid of these things. And I kind of looked into the various threads of my life that brought me to that moment. And I had a choice there, halfway through writing a book, and I believed in what I was saying in the book. And the book is not about taking injections. The book is about how you can treat yourself. Through natural medicines and also other natural techniques. And so I decided at that moment that I was, like it says, now te mero di moher. I decided that I would rather, it's going to sound rather romantic, I'd rather die than be listening to songs where it says, cura tudo, expulsa tudo. It cures everything, it expels everything. I didn't want to have been singing songs that I didn't believe in for the last seven and a half years at that point. So I made a choice at that particular moment. I was going to go continue on that particular lineage. From this set of visions that I had. And then I spent 8 months really sick, lost 10 kilos, lost an ex-wife, lost some rose-coloured spectacles about the world, but gained a whole lot of things, including this woman at the door over here, who I met towards the end. I'll tell you a little story. She kind of nursed me back to health towards the end of this ordeal, and she, we went to Bolivia. It's a bit of a long answer, isn't it? Went to Bolivia, and at one point I went to the internet shop, and someone had written to me saying, "I'm really happy, I've just had a baby." Someone else wrote to me, said, "I'm really happy, I've just got pregnant." So I wrote to someone else, I said, "Do you think all my problems would go away if I went home and got this woman pregnant?" And I went back to the hostel, and she opened the door, and she said, "Should we have a child?" And I went, "Yes." And we did. We had two. They were twins, and they were both born with birthmarks in the same place that I had my wound. So I took that story to my curandero, the guy who'd treated me, and I said, look at my magics, look at this. And he goes, "Oh, left a tag, did it?" Wasn't particularly impressed, because that kind of thing happens all the time in the Amazon, all the time. So yeah, there were very interesting visions happen, but what I was really fascinated is when the visions appear in real life as well. And that's how you test if your vision is actually true, or if it's just pulling something, out of your root chakra.